Championship earlier this year, but that was in Scarlet and Violet. So how is Cary going to fare now that we have moved over to Pokemon Champions? On the flip side of things, we've got Rushil, who is also a top competitor in his own right, has been able to get top 8 of the Pittsburgh Regional Championships earlier this year, but is also well within the top 80 in North America in order to make it to the World Championships. So this should be a great match.
Some cool teams here too. We got the Mega Charizard Y from Cary and the Mega Delphox and potentially Aerodactyl. Yeah, it's a double Mega team with Aerodactyl and Delphox from Rushil as well. Cary opting to go for the Mega Charizard Y. It is the most popular Mega Evolution Pokemon at this tournament, but has some cool techs on his team for the mirror. I think Glimmora is a really popular, well, maybe not really popular, but it's picking up in popularity, specifically for the Charizard matchup. It's really great on Charizard teams to have an edge in the mirror, but it can also be pretty good in teams that maybe struggle with Charizard. Mega Charizard Y plus Fairy type is a very popular combination of Pokemon. And the Sludge Bomb and Power Gem combination of attacks from Glimmora are very, very powerful.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see Glimmora because, you know, that was one of the Pokemon that I feel like got a little bit of a spotlight in Scarlet and Violet, but I feel like now in Pokemon Champions, it's really come into its own as a huge threat. When you think about the top performers in the meta, Glimmora is able to hit a lot of those for super effective damage. Kingambit, Earth Power. Charizard, Power Gem. And Sludge Bomb, Whimsicots. Yeah. Or, you know, Floettes.
Or Sylveons. There's a lot of Fairy-type Pokemon that don't love seeing a Sludge Bomb there. I also love the Rock Tomb option on Garchomp. You might often see Rock Slide in that spot, but Rock Tomb is a great option, not only for some speed control alongside that Tailwind from Whimsicott, but also Wide Guard is a very popular attack in this metagame, and Rock Tomb being a single target attack allows you to still hit opposing Mega Charizard-Ys with a Rock-type attack for huge damage through a possible Wide Guard.
There are still a lot of teams that are now actually trying to kind of calculate the damage for Rock Tomb versus Rock Slide. Rock Slide is more powerful, but I do appreciate the speed control option as well, especially if you're going to be playing against opposing Garchomp or opposing Tailwind teams, which is something that Rushil has. Well, it's not going to be the Prankster Tailwind from something like the Whimsicott. You do have the Tailwind as an option from the Aerodactyl.
Aerodactyl and Delphox, a cool combination of Mega Pokemon. It is the Calm Mind Delphox, so its ability to boost up its special attack, fire off some very powerful Heat Waves and Psychics. Delphox in the Mega form is very, very fast as well, so with the boost to its special attack can be very, very threatening.
But you actually do have a different type of weather. Well, Delphox is not going to be able to set the weather. You do have a way to take away the weather from the opposing Charizard once it Mega Evolves, because you've got the Alolan Ninetales. With the Snow Warning, you get the Snow set. Nevermelt Ice is going to be boosting up the power of those Blizzards, and the Freeze Dries actually gives you a really nice, super effective hit into those Basket Legion.
There's a couple Pokemon here that often carry a Focus Sash, but none of them are carrying it uniquely. It's the Aerodactyl, Ninetales, and Sneasler, all very good users of that Focus Sash item, but instead opting for much more offensive versions of those Pokemon. Of course, the White Herb Unburdened set from Sneasler allows you to either reduce the damage mitigation from an Intimidate once, or take away the defense drops from a close combat, and then in turn double your speed, which can be really useful against opposing Tailwind teams.
Yeah, but I'm excited to see whether or not Physical Fable actually comes into play. With the Unaware ability, it's going to be quite bulky against opposing Pokemon that are going to have stat changes. But you also have something like Helping Hand or Follow Me to try to redirect away an attack. Let's get into the first game between Cary and Rushil. We do have the Kingambit and Sneasler there for Rushil, and the Charizard and Garchomp have hit the field for Cary.
The classic Charizard Garchomp. If you played Pokemon back in 2014, this was something you would see very, very often. The Garchomp lead is very, very threatening. Of course, the Earthquake Immune partner for the Garchomp. Ground and Fire are really powerful combinations of attacking types. Sneasler does have the option to fake out either of these Pokemon and mitigate some damage. You have to imagine it might be the Charizard, but I mean, Earthquake and Heat Wave both are very, very scary for Rushil in this scenario. Rushil in this scenario. So you kind of have to pick which one you allow to attack. Maybe you have to make a defensive switch here as well.
I wonder if that means that the Alolan Ninetales might be in the back in order to take away the weather from the Charizard. That leaves you with kind of an option if you are Cary. Do you Mega Evolve now, which is what we are going to see Cary do, set the Sun, and maybe even just still Protect, just to kind of see if you bait out something like that Ninetales? But no, actually, no protects at all. It's just going to be the Charizard that takes the fake out. But that means that this Sneasler is very vulnerable, as well as this King Gambit to the Earthquake that's about to come in. That's a one-hit knockout into the opposing Sneasler, and the King Gambit does not want to take that hit either. What a great combination. You've got the Earthquake next to this flying-type Charizard, and the Sword Stance comes out from the King Gambit. Those Sucker Punches are about to hurt.
It's also the Black Glasses set, so the combination of Sword Stance and the boost from Black Glasses can turn Sucker Punches into huge one-hit KOs. I think a Charizard especially might just be one-hit KO'd by a Sucker Punch after that fake-out trip damage. Garchomp being a little bulkier, it's got the Citrus Berry as well, might be trained a little bit bulkier. Potentially could survive. Now you also have the Mega Delphox hitting the field for Rushil, and if you don't want to turn off the weather, you can use the weather to your advantage, powering up those heat waves for that Mega Delphox. With that speed boost and also the Levitate ability, we'll be attacking first outside of any priority attacks. So a combination of Sucker Punch and either Heat Wave or Psychic, I think is probably enough to knock out either of Cary's Pokemon.
Yeah, you have to worry about something like the Rock Tomb, but again, that's not necessarily the strongest Rock-type offense coming out from the Garchomp. You also don't get a same-type attack bonus for that either, and yeah, the Sucker Punch is just going to be a clean KO. That's going to be a tied-up game so far with 3 Pokemon left for each, and this Delphox takes the opportunity to go for a Calm Mind. Again, Rock Tomb not the strongest move in the game, and even though we might see some Rock Slides on these Pokemon, it's still, look at how well that Delphox takes it. Usually trained to survive a Rock Slide too.
Yeah, not the strongest move, but with the speed drop, we'll be able to follow up with one more Rock Tomb, and should be able to knock out this Delphox before it can fire off a +1 special attack boosted attack. I like that play a lot from Rushil. You guarantee that Charizard gets knocked out, and then your Delphox can only be targeted by the Garchomp. And by going for the Calm Mind there, you're essentially creating even more of an offensive threat in your side of the field. The Fake Out was able to set up the King Gambit, and then the pressure of the King Gambit is able to set up the Delphox and kind of chain those setups in that way. But now Basculegion hits the field. With the Sun Boost, those Aqua Jets might be a little bit less powerful, but it could still be enough for a knockout after that Rock Tomb damage.
Yeah, it really could. I mean, you just can't underestimate the power of a Basculegion with the Mystic Water item. It's going to be giving even more power over to those Water-type attacks, even if the Sun is going to make those feel weaker. So the Delphox, while it was able to get that Calm Mind boost, is actually going to take a reprieve. Knows it's under threat, with this Garchomp actually being faster thanks to that Rock Tomb speed drop. Protects around the board, though, as this Clefable does get in for basically free. And that's going to help at least try to redirect an away attack for 1 turn. But what's going to happen after that? You can't redirect away an Earthquake.
This is a tricky spot for Rushil. I think a Helping Hand boosted Sucker Punch should be able to one-hit KO the Garchomp. But if you do that, you allow the Basculegion to fire off an attack into King Gambit. Even in the Sun, I think the damage it took from that first Earthquake means a Mystic Water boosted Wave Crash should be enough. Cary tries to protect that Garchomp a little bit, doesn't want to lose it to that Sucker Punch.
Yeah, but the Helping Hand is still going to come through. So is it a Sucker Punch or is it just a Kowtow Cleave? That's going to be the question. If it is a Sucker Punch, though, into the Garchomp, that is going to fail. It was not into the Basculegion, where you otherwise would have been able to get a KO there. But take a look at this. Clefable going to take that Blaster Specs quite well. Not as powerful as it could be, since there's only been 1 knockout so far in Cary's team.
That was a tough spot for Rushil there. The Basculegion and Garchomp were both threatening knockouts into the King Gambit. Cary correctly identifying that Rushil was a little bit more concerned about that Garchomp, dodges the Sucker Punch with that swap, but instead of knocking out the King Gambit, gets some damage into Clefable, which could be really useful later on in this game.
Clefable is going to go for a Protect here because there is an Iron Head on the opposing King Gambit, but it's actually not going to even try to go for a Sucker Punch here. As the King Gambit for Cary gets the Kowtow Cleave into Rushil's. So now the thing is that you do have to play a Sucker Punch mind game. That's why that might have looked a little funny. Best Basculegion for Cary could have gone for something like an Aqua Jet, which would have made the Sucker Punch fail.
It would have, and I think the Sun has just run out as well. So now the Aqua Jet from Basculegion has hit its full power. I think Clefable, still very bulky, might be able to survive 1, so you don't have the option to, Aqua Jet the Clefable, knock it out before you can eliminate the redirection, and then knock out Rushil's King Gambit with your own. But if you are going for Aqua Jet, again, you're not getting hit by Sucker Punch, so you're still creating a lot of scary situations for Rushil to be in here.
We're just going to see the Delphox come back in, and so that might just have to be a piece that you give up here, as that's going to be what takes the Aqua Jet. And so Delphox gets taken down for the count. We only have 2 Pokemon left here now for Rushil, and you have just lost your Mega Evolution while you've also failed the Sucker Punch. So the opposing Kingambit is able to get the KO with that final Iron Head, and it's just going to be that Clefable on its last leg. Only attacking option that it has is Moonblast versus the 3 Pokemon that Cary has left in this first game.
Smart selection of Iron Head from Cary as well there. I think, staying down to Kingambit, Kowtow Cleave is slightly more powerful, and you maybe want to guarantee you get that knockout with the Kowtow Cleave. But if you Iron Head the Kingambit and it's already been knocked out, the Iron Head then gets redirected into Clefable, which will be able to knock it out very easily. So just a good way to ensure you're closing out this game very well. I think what Cary has done in this game to mitigate the threat of that Kingambit is really, really good. It got the Sucker Punch KO into the Charizard early on, and I don't think it did damage after that, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, I think it's so tough though, because you have the ability to go for Aqua Jet, which just is faster than the Sucker Punch in terms of that priority bracket. So the Sucker Punch would fail, but you also have a lot of protects on the team, or you could just switch. And so, yeah, Cary did a great job of neutralizing the threat of that Swords Dance Kingambit. And that's also kind of one of the drawbacks. When we think about Kingambits and the way that they're trained and the movesets that they have, we are seeing the Black Glasses variant like Rushil has with the Swords Dance, and then 2 Dark-type options with the Kowtow Cleave and the Sucker Punch, or Cary's kind of the flip side of that. You've got the Chople Berry Kingambit, but you have a coverage option, either something like the Low Kick or the Iron Head.
I think both are really good sets. It just kind of depends on what your team is set up to do. The Swords Dance Black Glasses set makes a lot of sense for Rushil because he has the Fake Out, he has the Follow Me with Clefable, he's got options like Encore on Ninetales that can help you set up a little bit. So getting that huge offensive threat out of Kingambit is a little bit more easy to capitalize on a team built like Rushil's, whereas Cary's is a little bit more flexible, it's more versatile. You often don't have those windows to go for Swords Dance and you want to be pumping out that consistent damage. So I think good moveset selections from both trainers, and the Kingambit on Rushil's side was a huge threat the entire time. Cary just played around it really, really well. Again, the Sucker Punch KO on Charizard, and I'm pretty sure that Kingambit did not deal damage for the rest of the game, which is just a really a credit to how Cary navigated that Kingambit.
I wonder if Rushil is going to think about something like the Aerodactyl instead. It felt like the Delphox, while it would have been able to take advantage of the sun set by the Mega Charizard for Cary, also ended up doing nothing, just because that Garchomp ended up being faster. There's no way for that Delphox to actually guarantee any damage, and I think that I look at something like the Aerodactyl that can set Tailwind. Maybe that's something that you consider, or even just going for the Clefable at the very beginning. Something like the Moonblast to threaten that Garchomp. Yeah,
the combination of Garchomp and Charizard was just really difficult for Rushil to break through at the beginning of the game. This Sneasler Kingambit lead is good for helping the Kingambit set up, but you can only fake out 1 Pokemon. There's no Garchomp Charizard lead this time, though. It's going to be the Kingambit and Basky Legion in favor of the 2 Pokemon for Cary, and then the same Sneasler and Kingambit for Rushil.
I feel like this is a little bit better, though, for Rushil this time around, because you can use the Sneasler to fake out the Kingambit, or you can also just go for a Protect if you expect there to be a double up. And the Basket Legion actually goes for the Wave Crash into the opposing Kingambit. Wow! If you're trying to get a Swords Dance here, you just don't have much HP left to play around with.
No fear from Cary, immediately going on the offense with both of his Pokemon, but a big Kowtow Cleave in return will be a big knockout for Rushil immediately. You get rid of that Aqua Jet, which was really hard for him to play around in that first game. I think a really great way to open up game number 2.
Absolutely. And now you have to kind of take a look at what you can do on the next turn. You might not have gotten the Swords Dance up, but you could still threaten something like the Sucker Punch, which would be great to deal with something like this Garchomp.
Now this Garchomp also is now really scary for Rushil. Kingambit can usually survive an Earthquake from full HP, and we saw the Sneasler get one KO'd by it in the first game. But now that Kingambit took all that damage from Wave Crash, Earthquake will just take 2 knockouts here, and if Rushil has brought the same 4 Pokemon, Clefable can switch on it okay, Delphox without Mega Evolving cannot.
But I feel like you just have to try to get as much mileage out of the 2 Pokemon that you have now. Maybe we end up seeing something like a close combat into the Garchomp from the Sneasler. At least you're able to chunk it down a little bit. Sucker Punch as well would do something, at least to this Garchomp.
True.
And you can't necessarily go for Earthquake with your own Kingambit right there next to you.
Ooh,
unless you try to protect. Yeah, Ninetales is a great adaptation for the second game.
Certainly, yeah. Ninetales will be able to come in and potentially threaten this Garchomp here. We did see Cary go for Iron Head into Sneasler on the prior turn, so maybe a little bit of a risky play there, but the Protect Earthquake is what Rushil was banking on, and it's what he got.
And Ninetales is a great piece to have here in front of this Garchomp. It is kind of naturally on the faster side of things. So unless you want to try to switch in the Charizard and go for a Mega Evolution, which you can't do on the same turn, you're going to have to fear the blizzards that could come out from this Ninetales.
I wonder if the Aerodactyl was Rushil's Mega Pokemon of choice in this game as well. I think Ninetales makes a lot of sense if you are bringing Aerodactyl, because if you have your Delphox, I think you actually want the sun to be up. But if you have your Aerodactyl, turning off the sun can be very, very helpful.
Well, Ninetales is going to let that Blizzard rip, and a big one-hit knockout into the Garchomp is going to send it packing back to the Pokemon Center. Extremely effective, and this is going to be the second time we see a Blizzard get a freeze onto a King Gambit. Jake, it is already only round 3 in the Indianapolis Regional Championships, and we're seeing another King Gambit freeze.
Oh, what a great turn from Rushil there. Potentially, I think Rushil was very willing to trade the Ninetales for that Swords Dance there, but gets so much more out of that turn, and I think Cary recognizes that this game is very, very difficult to win here. Let's just go to game 3.
Wow. Yeah, I think I would have had to imagine that the Charizard was in the back for Cary. So let's talk about why that forfeit happened. You know, you could bring in the Charizard for the Garchomp, but then it's still taking an enormous amount of damage from the Ninetales because it's still going to take neutral damage from the Blizzard.
Right.
And then what?
Well, especially with that the Swords Dance there too. I think if the Rushila's King Gambit had gone for just some damage with a Kowtow Cleaver or something, that might still be winnable for Cary.
Oh, but then the freeze too is so tough because you don't have the guaranteed chance that the King Gambit's going to thaw. But yeah, like Sucker Punch gets a one-hit knockout onto the Charizard with the Black Glasses and the Swords Dance.
And Rushil still had the Sneasler in the back, plus an unrevealed 4th Pokemon. That would have been very difficult, if not impossible, for Cary to win that. So I think just rightly moving on, let's just put that one in the books and then move on to game number 3.
I do think it could have been either the Delphox, though, or the Aerodactyl. I would have been happy to see either one. I think your logic makes sense on why it could have been the Aerodactyl there, but you know what? I want to say that Delphox is going to have its moment again. I just want to believe because it's such a cool-looking Mega Pokemon.
Well, there's synergy there between the Ninetales and the Delphox too. Of course, the Delphox, despite having the Intimidate, the Levitate rather, doesn't necessarily want to be in front of that Garchomp, and Ninetales can clear it out for you. But we do get the combination of Aerodactyl and Ninetales right off the bat. This is nice. You're kind of forcing the Charizard to Mega Evolve if you want to turn off the snow. But if the Charizard Mega Evolves, you would set up the Sun, which lowers the damage of your Basculegion's Aqua Jet, which might not then be able to KO the Aerodactyl. Also, Rock Slide very heavily threatens Charizard. I think Mega Aerodactyl is a clean one at KO into Charizard with that Rock Slide. And so a nice combination of offense here from Rushil, especially with the Freeze Dry on the Ninetales. You're also threatening super effective damage into the Basculegion.
Looks like a great lead here for Rushil in this game 3, which will decide which trainer will keep an undefeated record from Swiss Round 3 and then see what they can make with that at the end. But yeah, it's just going to be the Charizard leaving the field. As a poor King Gambit, it was very unlucky in that second game to have taken a freeze here, and it might not be super lucky on this income either. As you see, the Mega Evolution from the Aerodactyl Aqua Jet is going to be just not nearly enough to get the KO there onto the Basculegion as Rock Slide comes out, chips away at the King Gambit, does a decent chunk to the Basculegion, even the crit there. My goodness, this poor King Gambit. And the Freeze Dry will finish off this Basculegion.
Great play from Rushil. I think eliminating this Basculegion is really, really great. Just making sure you're taking away one of Cary's pieces immediately can be very useful. Basculegion also very, very good into Sneasler. So if that Sneasler is in the back for Rushil, that's another way to give yourself a little bit of an edge here. I think the Aqua Jet into Aerodactyl is crucial, though. That was really good damage. You've put Aerodactyl into Sucker Punch range, so now if Aerodactyl wants to Rock Slide, you can't. If this King Gambit is going to target you with that Sucker Punch, it's a great way to protect your Charizard. And all that damage, too, I think if Charizard Mega Evolves and goes for a Heat Wave here, that's probably going to knock out both of Rushil's Pokemon, too.
Yeah, this Aerodactyl does not have Wide Guard. That's actually a move that we classically see on these Mega Aerodactyls over something like the Protect. but Rushil's going to have that protect option instead. So there's not even a way for you to deny something like the Heat Wave and Mega Evolution here. Rushil might just have to go for something like a Double Protect or switch something in to have to take that Heat Wave. I think Clefable would be my Pokemon of choice to have to switch in there.
Yeah, but if you have the Sneasler and King Gambit again in this third game, which are both very powerful Pokemon, that means you don't have a Clefable. You don't really have a great option here to swap into this Heat Wave.
No, and I think even if you want to try to go for Rock Slide here, this King Gambit could just go for a Sucker Punch and knock out this Aerodactyl before you get the Rock Slide. So we're going to see Ninetales protect. Oh, but it's the Sucker Punch. So maybe Aerodactyl actually just goes for a Tailwind here. And that's exactly what it goes for. Denies the Sucker Punch, gets the Tailwind out so that your pieces can, for sure, outspeed this Charizard. Oh, but the Charizard actually even just goes for a Weather Ball here. Would have liked to just get a one-hit knockout into the Ninetales, expecting that the Sucker Punch would pick up the Aerodactyl anyway. I
think that's actually a really, really smart play from Cary. If the Sucker Punch goes through, Aerodactyl gets knocked out anyway. And if an Aerodactyl gets knocked out, you don't need to spread damage. Weather Ball is perfectly accurate. You will never miss it. But also, if the Aerodactyl goes for a Tailwind here and you Heat Wave and knock it out, that gives Rushil a free swap. And not giving him that swap as Tailwind goes up is something that can build you a lot of momentum.
Ooh, one of the nice pieces to Ninetales kit is with Encore and not being a prankster Pokemon like the Sableye we saw earlier, you can actually Encore these dark types. It's going to be the last thing that Ninetales does in this third game, but this King Gambit is locked into Sucker Punch.
It's not the worst thing to be locked into, right? You kind of want to be Sucker Punching to make sure your Charizard doesn't get hit by a Rock Slide, but it can be taken advantage of later on in the game. Here, this Sneasler, a great example. Sneasler would potentially fear an Iron Head. It could do a lot of damage into Sneasler, but now you can pretty freely fake out this Charizard and make sure no Heat Waves come through, and this King Gambit can't really threaten your Sneasler either, especially if you fake out, you can't damage it at all.
Yeah, but I think you still worry about like how much mileage can you actually get out of something like the Aerodactyl. So do you try to fake out the King Gambit instead, knowing that it can just Sucker Punch your Aerodactyl? So that's exactly what we see. Aerodactyl hoping here you're going to be able to end up getting something like a Rock Slide down onto both of these Pokemon. Would have been better if it had been the Charizard in that Garchomp slot, so Garchomp makes the perfect switch in, but you can see the vision.
Well, and also now this Encore and a Sucker Punch creates a little bit of a tougher spot for Cary. I think if the King Gambit wasn't Encored, Protect and Earthquake would be a really free option. Not free, it would be a great option. Or Sucker Punch and like Dragon Claw into Sneasler could be something. But now that this King Gambit can't protect itself, if you want to Earthquake and knock out Sneasler, you essentially have to switch in your Charizard. If you switch in Charizard to this Aerodactyl, a Rock Slide is probably coming through and it gets knocked out. So you're forcing like not the most optimal play out of Cary here, which is a great way for Rushil to maybe kind of deal with the damage threats of both of Cary's Pokemon.
And you still have Tailwind at your disposal, so you have to worry about this Aerodactyl outspeeding the Garchomp and just going for something like a Rock Slide.
Yeah.
Wow. King Gambit is actually going to switch out so that this Garchomp can go for the Earthquake, but the Rock Slide actually misses the Charizard that it would have loved to connect into. Can Garchomp actually fight through this, though? Charizard's going to have to take this close combat, too, so a great switch that Cary does not get punished for on this turn. But Garchomp, you gotta love your trainer here. You gotta make sure that you can get this Earthquake down or this Rock Tomb into this, and they can't!
Rock Slide, baby! We're so back. No. Oh my goodness. Well, hey, we got a Rock Slide meta. I'm glad we got to appreciate it early on in this stream.
Both sides of the spectrum, right?
Exactly.
The miss and the flinch.
I mean, obviously you would have rather had the knock onto Charizard and lose your Sneasler if you were Rushil there. I think the miss was pretty detrimental to the game plan. But at least the Garchomp flinching means that this game isn't just over, right? Your Sneasler is around. You can go for this big close combat. And with that Unburden boost, you're actually attacking before the Aerodactyl this turn.
Yeah, and so that means that you will be able to actually just maybe finish this off. Oh, okay. Citrus Berry, though, has to be eaten first. As you are a Mega Aerodactyl now, you do get to eat that berry since base Aerodactyl has a nerve, and this is going to be a trade. That's going to be the dual Wing Beat into the Garchomp. Wow! The Aerodactyl actually hangs on through that.
Yeah, that's huge. If the Aerodactyl goes down there, this, I think, is a little bit harder for Rushil. But now that this Aerodactyl's around, you're still having to dedicate that Sucker Punch attention into the Aerodactyl. You don't want to lose a Charizard to a Rock Slide. And of course, this Sneasler still in a pretty good spot here, resisting the Sucker Punches, threatening super effective close combat, or even some great damage with Dire Claw into Charizard here. Means that this Sneasler still demands attention as well. And if you're Sucker Punching the Aerodactyl, you're not going for damage into Sneasler. Especially, I think the Sun just ended as well. So a Weather Ball is no longer a reliable single target option. If you go for Heat Wave without the Sun Boost, I think Sneasler probably survives.
All right, King Gambit does go for the Sucker Punch. I was going to say one way around that is to reset back up Tailwind, but I think you're okay with this trade. You have the Chople Berry that's going to activate on this King Gambit for the close combat, but it's already so low, and we saw that close combat earlier did about 70, so that was going to be a knockout regardless of the Chople Berry. I think you were happy to take that any day of the week. Might have to take a KO back, though, because the Heat Wave is going to be single target now. And you also had a couple of close combat drop. Well, actually.
You had one.
You had one.
I think it might survive that if you don't have the special defense drop, but because you close combated twice, you only get the White Herb activation once. And now, this is going to be really close. Sucker Punch from a Black Glasses King Gambit might be enough for the KO.
I think this is good enough.
I think it might be. And even if it's not, you still have the non-weather boosted Heat Wave that potentially King Gambit can survive.
Ooh.
It might be really close.
That might be a little close. Charizard's going to go first regardless, though. King Gambit does not survive it. And so Cary is going to end up taking down the King Gambit and winning the set 2-1.
The Tailwind had expired. There's no more speed boost, so maybe we're still missing that and potentially thinking it was faster.